Things took an absolutely shocking turn for the New York Knicks as Josh Hart and Tom Thibodeau got into an absolute screaming match after one of the worst games of the season that Josh Hart has played, leading to him and Tom Thibodeau really getting into it at a very, very interesting time, as there was also another Knicks player earlier this week to call out Tibbs, and that has a lot of fans questioning a lot going in to this upcoming offseason after the playoffs, and we're going to break it all down. What's up, guys? Welcome back to Knicks Digest. It's Chris here, and we're going to jump right into things as always. And guys, if you're part of that 67% that's not subscribed, this is the place to be for all New York Knicks content. You do not want to miss out. We're having a bunch of fun here, but let's jump into the video. We have a lot to discuss because, well, things took an interesting turn for the New York Knicks recently. Josh Hart and Tom Thibodeau got into a screaming match. The two have been known to like each other and be very, very close with each other. However, that was not really seen against the Golden State Warriors when Josh Hart and Tom Thibodeau absolutely got into it with each other. It was a full-blown screaming match, full-blown argument. They had to be separated. They were really, really not pleased with each other, you could tell. And honestly, guys, let's just take a look at the video ourselves. As we can see here, Josh Hart and Tibbs are screaming at each other. And Tibbs, you can kind of read his lips if you watch this video a few times. He clearly is getting into it, and you see Landry Shamet get up and try to lock everyone in. Rick Brunson shows up, and Tom Thibodeau has had some very choice words for Josh Hart over all of this. Now, look, as you guys know, if you've been following the channel for a while, I do not curse on Knicks Digest. So I'm going to not curse right here, but Tom Thibodeau said, play the effing game, do your effing job, and then again said, do your effing job. He was really, really displeased with Josh Hart, the way he was acting. Now, look, in all fairness to Josh, here's the thing. Josh Hart is super, super good for this team. We all know that. He's one of the best glue guys you could ever possibly find. He's a great teammate. He's effectively the second in command for captain after Jalen Brunson. I've said this before. Essentially, in hockey, they have the A patch on your name next to the captain. That would be Josh Hart. There's no way around it. Josh Hart has been awesome for the New York Knicks. He's a great guy for the vibes. He really, really does work so hard, and he's their glue guy. He has everyone's best interest at heart. He plays to win. He's the best guy that anyone could ask for out of a role player, to the point where he's not even really a role player anymore. He's way too good to be classified as that. But Josh Hart, he had a terrible game against the Golden State Warriors. I mean, truly just not a good performance. And look, at the end of the day, you're looking at Mike Breen, who's breaking this down, saying that Tibbs loves Josh Hart, and Richard Jefferson saying this is 100% normal. Players and coaches do get into it, and sometimes things just culminate weirdly. I mean, you look at everything that's being said, and just Josh Hart and Tibbs not getting into it. It's the fourth time in Josh's Knicks career where he hasn't scored a single point. New York has never won one of those games, unsurprisingly. So Josh was just not having a good night, and clearly it boiled over. Now, I'm not trying to say it's all Josh's fault. It's probably a mix. The two were probably just not feeling each other's vibe at the moment. The Knicks were really, really struggling on offense outside of Karl-Anthony Towns last night. So it does make some sense that this would all happen. I mean, looking at the box score alone, you could see that everyone played fine. It was Josh who just did not have a good night. Missed all his shots. 0 points, obviously. Negative plus minus, which is rare for him. If someone's going to have a plus minus that's positive, it's usually Josh Hart. Win or loss. Now, outside of all that, it's just sometimes you play poorly. Josh plays a lot of minutes. Tibbs trusts him as much as anyone. So he's going to be a guy who also Tibbs knows he can scream at, and Josh Hart can take it. Josh is not going to be all whiny and mopey about it, and because he's not going to be all whiny and mopey about it, we saw these two actually talk about this incident, unsurprisingly, when they were asked. Now, jumping into what Josh Hart said, he said, you all know me. You all know my feelings towards Tibbs. You're not going to find a more loyal player. I love Tibbs. I think that was just my frustration coming out with the flow of the game, my own individual performance, and then going on to say, yeah, I was just, it was just something that just happened in the heat of the moment. I'm a competitor. Obviously, he's a competitor. So sometimes those things happen. I don't really think it doesn't affect our relationship. It doesn't show anything of what's going on. It's just two extremely competitive people in a fiery moment. I love Tibbs. I love what he's doing, and he's putting us in the best position to be successful. So Josh Hart, definitely after this, I don't want to call this damage control because it feels unfair to Josh and to Tibbs to say that it's just damage control. It's not. Josh Hart understandably played poorly last night. There's no way around it. I'm not going to sit here and say he didn't. Josh played poorly, and it looked like he was just upset. Him and Tibbs are both very, very competitive people, and sometimes when competitive people, when you're losing a game that you really want to win, you don't see eye to eye, and you start screaming at each other, trying to just basically just trying to do whatever it takes to win, and it boiled over in the wrong way, which happens plenty of times, but definitely does cause some concern, considering the fact that we also saw Mikal Bridges ask Tom Thibodeau recently for less minutes to give the bench guys some more minutes and basically say, yeah, it takes a toll on the body playing 40 minutes every night. So clearly there's now been multiple instances with Tibbs and one of the key players of the New York Knicks, which is just an interesting thing to think about in the grand scheme of things. Does Leon Rose entertain the idea of moving on from Tibbs for this reason that some of the players maybe aren't getting along with him or not liking his style? It's something the Knicks will have to consider come this offseason. And a lot of it, in fairness, a lot of it depends on, well, how the New York Knicks do in the playoffs, specifically how Josh Hart does in the playoffs as well, because he's been someone who's a great playoff performer so far for the Knicks, the only team he's ever been to the playoffs on. No shade towards Josh, literally saying that. And then it comes down to how well does Tibbs coach. That's a huge part of it. Obviously, Jalen Brunson's return to the court is going to have a huge impact as well, and if Karl-Anthony Towns can perform in the playoffs better than he has in the past, that also is a bigger impact. But looking at this, if the Knicks get bounced in the first round, Tibbs is going to be on very, very shaky ground for his job. It's possible that he would not come out of the summer as the Knicks head coach. It's very, very likely if the Knicks get bounced in the first round. Now, personally, I just don't think they're going to. I get it. People are weirdly not confident in this Knicks team because there's been some moments of lapses and all that. Sure, guess what? They're still much, much better than all but two of the teams in the Eastern Conference, and I think they can hang with the Cavs and beat them on any given series. It's the Celtics who the Knicks are going to run into in the second round, and I want to make it very clear I'm not wishing injury on the Celtics, but the New York Knicks are not beating a healthy Celtics team. They're just not. They're not ready, and they have 4 or 5 years of trying to contend, so they don't have to beat the Celtics team this year. But as long as the Celtics are fully healthy, they are going to beat the Knicks. The Knicks are going to have an incredibly difficult time unless the difference that Mitchell Robinson makes, because he's the one guy who really hasn't been there for the majority of the games, really plays well. And it's also important to mention here that Josh Hart, his other worst game of the season, came against the Boston Celtics fairly recently, back in, what was it, January? When the Knicks lost to the Celtics, and it was just an ugly, ugly game where Josh Hart did not play well, and literally Jalen Brunson was the only person who was doing anything effective. So it became very, very difficult to watch, and Josh Hart also struggled then. So he struggled in a few big games that does have people kind of up in arms about it, but at the end of the day, it's not an indictment on Josh Hart and Tom Thibodeau's relationship, and I don't think that's going to cause anything. You look at it, and Tibbs said, I love Josh. It was whatever to get us going, to try to get us going. And that makes perfect sense, honestly. And Josh Hart said, without number 11, Jalen Brunson, obviously, sometimes we're not as organized. One thing about us, the ball screen by myself is in more actions now. The role is a bit different. More catch and shoot. I'm trying to figure out how to be effective in that way, which is very important because it's the one knock on Josh Hart's game right now is he's not shooting the ball well at all. Shooting around 27% since the turn of the new year on January 1st. Now, Josh, all that being said, is having a great season with the Knicks. He's putting up 14 points per game, 10 rebounds, 5.5 assists, getting 1.4 steals per game, shooting 53% from the field, so it's just the three-point percentage has been down, but it's still a 33% in general, which isn't terrible. That's fine for your worst shooter in the starting lineup. That's completely fine. So it's just a matter of Josh finding that consistency like he did last playoffs when he hired his shooting coach to come back and help him out. Obviously, another huge part of this is Jalen Brunson and his evident return. The man's putting up 26 points, 7.5 assists, 3 rebounds, getting a steal per game, shooting 49% from the field and 38% from 3. The man's been awesome. We all know Jalen Brunson's the best. He's one of the best players in the NBA. Obviously, we don't really even have to go into much more of that, especially because we do have an injury update that is coming out very soon, right after this video, so you guys want to make sure to be subscribed to Knicks Digest for that. Like this video, turn on post notifications, subscribe if you guys are enjoying the content. Have a great day, and go Knicks.